Brian. And not the people who came into his life and did these things to him. Yes, we meet them, but at the end of the day, we feel like we've come away with some understanding of Brian and his survival skills. And I think that's really important for us to take away.
And that speaks to what you were saying as well, as far as this complete portrait
Yes.
of a person, not just a stereotypical thing or a cliche.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, and another thing that struck me again this time was the Elizabeth Banks character here, about someone who's saying, I don't want to just be another person who needs something from him. It's a fascinating relationship, because you think of anyone in a certain caregiver situation. My mom has MS, my dad's like her 24-hour caregiver, and it's a very different type of relationship than your average sort of romantic relationship. But I think it's like, what is that in her that is guiding her towards this person and going like, I want to be your other half. It's a fascinating person.
An incredibly selfless thing.
Absolutely.
And as you point out, so lucky that they made that connection.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think, having gone through some things like that, and also I teach kids who have been emotionally abused. It's a tough thing to, you're talking about, every year if you look for jobs and you're a special ed teacher, the jobs are always open, or positions working with kids with emotional disabilities, because it's so hard, because there's a high turnover rate, there's a high burnout. The kids that need you the most often are, you're going to spend your worst, it's just a really tough, very hard field. And I think we talked about bravery the other day, right? And a lot of the kids, they act out, they swear, they scream, they try to stab themselves or other people in class during school, but that's pain that they're not even able to process yet. It's just like to develop that cognitive ability to understand like the people that were there that you were supposed to trust the most, that were supposed to love you, have turned their back on you, have abused you. There's so much there that they carry. These are like, I teach like 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, Like, I had a kid who was like in 6th grade with PTSD. How do you even explain that? And I always say, is it an emotional abuse, a disability, or is it, is it or is it just a kid who's been given way more than he should ever have in his life, And, I've worked with people with schizophrenia, when they're older, and I just can't even imagine what Brian Wilson had gone through, without someone like Melinda come along and help.
Before we open it up to questions and comments, I wonder if you guys could comment on this whole casting choice, this strategy that the director employed with 2 different actors. Again, I said earlier that when I first heard about this, I thought, this is just a gimmick. But what fruits it bears on the screen?
Well, I think it points to sort of this transition within the character himself. And I will confess, I was totally involved in Paul Dano's performance, and he played himself. And whenever an actor takes that extra step and they play the music and it's clear that they're the ones playing it, I always have to sort of tip my hat to them, because it's much easier to say we can fix that with hands in post-production, but it added, I think, a certain layer to the connection that the audience was able to make with him, and I really found that fascinating. But it works, and in some ways works better than old age makeup on Paul Dano somewhere down the road. So I think that maybe it was a good choice, I think.
On that note, about you saying he's playing his own music, I read that Paul Dano, he was a musician, he was in bands, and apparently the Pet Sounds recording sessions there, they filmed with 2 16mm cameras, and he was actually directing the musicians as far as pointing out the notes and how they should do it. So that was, his, as you say, his background just gives a validity to the whole thing.
I didn't realize I was a Brian Wilson fan until I saw this movie, and I was like, all my favorite Beach Boys songs, he's the one that wrote it. There's just so much depth to them. And I'll just say, Wouldn't It Be Nice really quick. It's one of the best end credit songs ever in Michael Moore's Roger and Me, if you've seen how they use that there. And I love how it's very differently used here. But as you said, the juxtaposition, I love how it's like different, each end of his life is like haunting the other. you feel Giamatti's presence in the Dano scenes. You see, because there's some of the scenes with the father. It's a similarly abusive, emotionally abusive dynamic, and I love how certain aspects of both ends of the film mirror each other, and to have that juxtaposition all the way through is really intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Paul Dano definitely had the juicy part because he gets to be in the studio and playing the hits, and it's fun. You get to see Hal Blaine talk about how he's better than Phil Spector, which I always like because, you know, he's not a good person. but and he likes
Mr. understatement down there at the end.
Yeah, but I think, you know, and so I think he definitely gets the lion's share of attention, but also I feel like John Cusack has such an interesting part because he has so much more subtlety and nuance, and you know, portraying someone who goes through something like that is very difficult. And I think like how towing that line between mental illness and also going through that controlling and the manipulation and everything, it's just, and I don't know, we were talking about how like, the thing I love about Brian Wilson is he goes through that horrible times, but he's not writing like angry punk songs. He's writing God Only Knows. He writes Love and Mercy. He writes these beautiful songs that are so heartfelt. You know, we talked backstage about how he had his brother Carl sing the lead on God Only Knows because he's like, Carl's got the most angelic voice I've ever heard. You know, and like only someone who really believes in music and believes in that would just give up that space and say, this is what that song needs. You know, you sing that. I just think that's really remarkable.
It's also, I think, a great opportunity for us to sort of, because oftentimes we think of creative people as they're not normal in such a way, and they're very normal. And this his mental illness, I would hate for that to say, well, that's part of what made him creative, was that he was this, and because I think that we missed the opportunity to sort of say that, no, that's not where we need to go with that particular conversation, because it was clear that there was this creative genius, and then there were these things that happened to him which were above and beyond the creative process. And because sometimes we sort of, particularly when we're dealing with very creative people, we're like, well, there's something wrong with them. And I don't think that there's something wrong with them in that way. I think it's a gift that they have, and they're able to channel that and share that with us. Because I mean, when Brian Wilson comes back for himself, not for us. Because oftentimes it's like, there's this pressure to come back for the fans or something, but I think that what was great was he got married and had 5 kids, and when he was ready to do this thing again, then I'll do it again. And I think that that's really something that's important to recognize.
It's not about the money or the fame.
No, absolutely.
I mean, I think when you said that, it was just funny because, you know, if you've been in bands, you always know like there's that weird band dynamic. You guys, who's played in bands before? So you guys know, like, there's always like that one guy who's like, can we just do the one hit song over and over again? And you're like, no, but I mean, it's just, you know, you gotta grow. And I like the fact that there's that scene where he says, like, I have to grow. I can't just write about parking lots and songs and surfing because surfers
We don't even
like
surf. We don't even surf. Do people? Are there mics around? So if people have questions, we'll certainly take some questions.